Welcome to Pioneers in Payments, where payments experts share their insights. Now, here's our host, Donna Blum.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Pioneers in Payments. Today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Sheree Thornsberry. Welcome, Sheree.
Thank you, Donna. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me today.
Well, I'm so glad you could join us. So my first question for you is just to give us a little background on who you are,
Sure.
maybe some of your experience in the payments industry, and also the work that you do at I'm going to have to say it again, RMP Solutions.
Sure, no problem, Donna. So I have about 30 plus years of experience in the industry. So I'm dating myself just a little bit. I would say that I'm a veteran or legacy player. And I've worked in what I would call most of the roles in the value chain, either worked with or worked for. And so have a lot of experience in terms of program management, banking, processing, and then working very closely with actually all four of the network providers. When I made a personal lifestyle change, moving from the Midwest out to California with my husband after the youngest of our four children went off to college, I decided that it was time to do something a little bit different and decided to go into consulting. So saw a real need in the industry for people in different areas to get support from individuals who were subject matter experts and had also spent time in seat. I think that's one of the core things about RMP Solutions is that all of our consultants that work as part of the team, depending upon the size of the project, all have been in seat. So they have a lot of real life experience and understand that as we work with these clients as an extension of their team, that we need to help them provide custom and unique solutions that are going to help their businesses progress forward. And understanding that there's a lot of challenges in doing so in the industry. It's a very dynamic space, and there's been a lot of activity over the last year or so. Let me tell you,
Yes.
it's very interesting, as you know.
So that's fantastic. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about how dynamic the industry is today. Obviously, there's a lot going on. What would you say is the most notable trend in the payments industry?
Yeah, well, I think that, and we often see this in this industry, it's a bit cyclical in terms of what happens. So the industry overall likes to be extremely innovative. And I love that about the industry. A lot of times the industry will innovate and do things that are what I would say a little bit over their skis. And then something happens or a number of things happen where the regulators come in and shut down some of that innovation. So everybody retreats a little bit into a more conservative mode and tends to figure out, how can we manage innovation and balance that with doing the right things from a regulatory perspective. And so I think that's where we are today. Is a lot of people are in, whether you're a bank, you're a network, you're a fintech, you're somehow a BaaS provider or connector within the space. I think everybody's grappling a little bit with how do I do this in a way that is going to continue to move the industry forward, serve consumers and business clients, yet do it in a way that we are honoring what we need to do from a risk and compliance perspective.
Very good. Yes, it's definitely a balancing act there, right?
It is. And it's not an easy one to walk. And, we work with a lot of fintechs, we work with a lot of banks. And it all looks very glamorous, particularly for those that are startups and want to jump into this space. I don't think that a lot of times they recognize the amount of work that it takes. So we have actually worked with clients where we've done some initial assessment and some education around the space, and they have decided not to go into the space. We actually see that as a positive because in our minds, we want to work with folks so that they understand what it takes because, all good entries into the space will lift the space up. But as you know, that when things happen and some of the newer entrants fall, it impacts the entire industry. And we all need to react in a certain way. So doing it responsibly is something that is a big message that we deliver to our clients. And then we help them define how to do that.
That's great. I think that is a valuable service that you're providing, for sure, not just to your clients, but to the whole industry, really. Okay, so let's talk about what you perceive to be the greatest opportunity for organizations that process payments in the industry today.
I actually think that one of the biggest opportunities, and I often see this in the industry, is for organizations to actually take a step back and focus more time on strategy and planning. We tend to be an organization that likes to run fast. We have a little bit of FOMO. If I don't get in now, I'll never get in, or if I don't offer this solution, or if I don't move forward in terms of this sales channel, then I might be shut out. But what we find is organizations that take a step back, try to look to the future and what we call around the corner, so that they can understand some micro and macro trends and some things that may be happening in the future, and how do they get themselves to weave in their innovation and the other pieces of their infrastructure to actually not only be doing well today from a growth perspective, but doing well in the future.
Yes.
And we do have a couple of clients that have done a very nice job of that. But those clients tend to be managing a smaller book of business. So what we find is the clients that are legacy players that have bigger books of business, it's hard for them to slow down and spend some time focusing on strategy and planning so that they can actually then speed up. So we try to give them some tools and some real life ability to execute some things in order to practice a little bit more discipline in those areas.
That's great. As you were describing that, I was just thinking of sort of like a small boat as compared to a massive ship with a tiny rudder, right? It takes much longer to course correct when you've got a massive organization, and so but they do need to course correct. So
That's
yeah.
absolutely right. And so when we have clients that are new to the industry, or maybe haven't been as long as some of the legacy players, they are at a perfect spot where they don't have as much business, that the things that are maybe they're starting to see crack a little bit in terms of their infrastructure, let's get them shored up now, so then you can move forward at a faster pace. You are absolutely right. When we inherit an organization that has just a lot of legacy stuff going on, it takes much longer to course correct in some of those areas. And you can't stop your business while you change the business. So we help our clients, continue to run the business while they change the business, which are not easy things to do, for sure.
Yes, I would imagine so. Even just from a resource perspective, keeping everything running as it should while you're looking to the future and making changes. Yeah. Well, we just talked about the greatest opportunity. What would you say is the greatest challenge for these organizations today?
Yeah, most of what I see with these organizations is just really, again, unless you've been a legacy player and you understand, because you've gone through all the challenges of, growth, how to structure your business, risk and compliance, so they've managed, they've had things, banks have had things like MRAs. So they've learned some of the hard things. I think the biggest challenge is really understanding the depth of the risk and compliance structure, the oversight structure that has to be developed. It's going to be different in a bank from a BaaS provider, from a connector, from a network, from a program manager. And so, we try to really work with our clients, because that is the core, of what they need to responsibly do in the industry. And while it may not feel as glamorous or fun as the sales and the product innovation, it's an absolute necessity. The other thing that we do, and I think this speaks a little bit to some of the folks on the team who do have an HR background, is that we always assess culture, because when there's change in an organization, particularly organizations that may not have typically focused on payments, so they do other things as part of their portfolio, payments tends to be very different. One of the biggest stop points is actually culture. and resistance to change and resistance to, having what feels like this sort of weird part of the portfolio show up. And what are the cultural stall points, and how do we identify those, and how do we mitigate those so those don't stand in the way of, becoming a growth organization and really being successful in the space.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you got to kind of look ahead to see what hurdles, what obstacles stand in the way, and have a plan for those. So, yeah.
That's exactly right. So, because as we're seeing again, and the last year has been particularly hard in the industry. We've obviously seen some, major banks that have been shutting down. We've seen neobanks that have, dried up on funding. We've seen some consumer issues in terms of UDAP. So, it's been it's been a little bit of a tough year for the industry. And again, we operate typically in a space where we're ahead of the regulators. So when we work with clients, we actually encourage them to have a very strong relationship with the regulators, regardless of where they play in the space, in order to make sure that the regulators are understanding and hearing from them what they're thinking about in terms of innovation and things down the road. There seems to be too much still of siloed functions there, and
Right.
getting those functions together and talking about, the challenges, the opportunities. I mean, because I think overall the space is looking to do excellent work for, consumer clients, whether they, come at low risk or maybe are higher risk portfolios, commercial clients, again, making payments, delivery faster, easier, more secure. So I think there is an intent of the industry to really do things the right way and to make this a very meaningful experience for everyone who, is an account holder. And so it's often the times though that it's either the bad players or the things that went awry that we hear about, and we don't often hear about all the good things that are going in the industry.
Isn't that the way it is? You watch the
Mhm.
news, you don't hear about all the good stuff that's happening in the world. It's
I
just the
know.
bad stuff.
My husband and we've stopped watching most of the news just for that very reason. There's just such an intense focus on all the wrongs in the world. It gets a little bit depressing, but
It does. I
same
agree
thing
with
in the
you
payment
there.
space. And again, there's a ton of great work going on in the payment space, and,
Yes.
people really, really wanting to do the right thing. So
Well, let's make a pact. Let's focus on the positive.
here we go.
So, one last question for you, and maybe you've already hinted on it, but with so much happening in the industry, I think it can become very confusing for some, individuals who are making decisions about, what path to take, or what technology to deploy, what decisions to make. So, if you had to leave our audience with one silver bullet piece of advice, what would that be?
So it's very interesting because a lot of the clients that we work with that are newer to the industry, they actually ask that very same question. What is the silver bullet? And, I said, unfortunately, from our perspective, there is no one silver bullet. You have to do the work. If you shortcut, you're going to find yourself with some kind of issue or challenge that, to your point, as you scale, is going to be harder to course correct. So do the right thing in terms of what is your strategy that is unique to you as a provider? What is your plan? And then how do you get there? How much we often work with clients in terms of how much do you build? How much do you buy, and how much do you partner? And I will tell you that newer entrants into this space, they come in and they want to own and build everything themselves. We often counsel against that. Put certain things in partners, in services of more legacy providers or people that have those capabilities. And if you want to build down the road, then let's have that discussion at a later time. But to get into the space, how do you partner with others that you can outsource some of this work to, while still maintaining the right level of oversight? And so a lot of the newer clients are taking that path in terms of, being able to get into the space, but really developing some very strong partnerships. And frankly, when I entered the space a long time ago, those folks didn't exist out there. What I call the connectors, the middleware, some of them characterized as BaaS provider. That's a generally very large term used very different ways. Technology providers, some of those are characterizing themselves as FinTechs. So don't feel like you have to do it all. I always say it takes a village. So invest in the right partnerships to get into the space, to get doing things in a responsible way. And then you can decide if you grow enough that if you want to take on more pieces and parts. If you look at some of the legacy players that are vertically integrated, they didn't start there, right? They may have evolved there over time for various reasons, but they certainly didn't start there. So that's a big undertaking. And again, we usually counsel most of our clients not to do that.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. If they're building it from scratch, and many times they're building something that already exists, right? So
Yes, that's right.
no need to reinvent the wheel. They can certainly, I would think, deploy and onboard more quickly if they're utilizing a solution that already exists.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. So Donna, no need to recreate the wheel for sure.
That's right. Okay. Well, Sheree, thank you so much. Before I let you go, though, I just want to make sure that our audience knows how to learn more about your consulting organization and the services that you provide.
Sure, absolutely. I would say the best way is just to reach out directly. Anybody that sends us an email, we chat with. We love to hear what's going on in the industry and clients and prospects challenges and issues. So you can reach me at Sheree. It's Sheree. It has an unusual spelling at rmpsolutions.llc.com. And Donna also, if you want to reach out to her, has all of my contact information. But we'd be just happy to have a conversation if you're curious about learning a little bit more.
Wonderful. Okay. And I would imagine there's a website as well.
We don't have a website yet. That is under construction right now. So no website yet. So best way to get in touch with us is email.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, Sheree, again, thank you so much for your time and just your insights on all that's happening in the industry. I think just some really valuable advice was shared here today. So I know our audience will appreciate that as well. So I just want to again say thank you. And I want to thank everybody for watching today.
Thanks, Donna.
Bye now.
Have a great rest of the week. Take care.
Okay, you too. Bye, Sheree.